Today, we're going to be talking about the 3 most broken solo queue supports to play in the new season of Season 16. I have been playing a bunch of the new season. I'm having some pretty good success. These are my win rates on these 3 best supports to play. I have had a lot of coaching sessions already, so I've got a good sense of what is working and what isn't in practice with the new season. So without further ado, we're going to get into it and start with the 3rd best support to climb right now. Okay, so coming in at number 3, this one might be surprising to a few of you. She's not mentioned with many other content creators or in other tier lists right at the top, but I believe that Leona is an absolute demon with the new season. Now, why might I say this? Why is she OP? In my eyes, she can abuse Bandle Pipes and Protoplasm Harness and Zeke's very well. So there are a bunch of new melee support items that came out with the new season, right? And right now, Bandle Pipe is in an incredibly broken spot, the most broken item in the game. Zeke's Herald was also changed to give ultimate ability haste, which is very nice. And Protoplasm Harness is quite an affordable item that gives a lot of flat health and ability haste and is relatively affordable, so supports are quite enjoying that as well. And then especially supports who have a lot of resistances built into their kit, like Leona's W and Aftershock. It scales the amount of health that they get back. And so these new melee support items are really feeling solid on Leona, and that's going to be one of the main reasons why she is feeling so strong. She also abuses Bloodsong. I believe Bloodsong is the best support quest item at the moment. And she is also going to abuse Demolish. So all of these changes have really favored Leona. Now, even outside of these changes, I think that Leona was heavily underrated and underplayed in Season 15, but now with all of these changes coming through, she's going to be even happier. But with that said, Demolish was changed to be a 3 auto attack kind of proc so that you can just use it faster. You don't have to hang around a tower for ages, especially on Leona, who can get 3 auto attacks out, probably the fastest out of any support in the game as well. She has an incredibly short ultimate cooldown. It surprises a lot of people, especially when you're building Kindle Gem items, and if you have Zeke's there, it can get ridiculously low, like around 40 seconds, or even around a minute with its level 1 cooldown timer, so you can constantly make plays. And she is just really enjoying the new season with being more like bot-centric, lane-focused. She has a lot of threat in lane. She can really threaten squishy champions. She can really stat check melee champions and melee matchups. And so she ends up being surprisingly blind pickable. She can thrive in range matchups. She can stat check the melee matchups. And she thrives in chaos, right? There's a lot of pace in the game at the moment due to home guards running rampant and everyone is active all the time, due to mid-quest giving mid laners empowered recalls, due to top laners getting TPs for free. There's just a lot that is going on that increases the pace of the game, and Leona can really thrive in that chaos. She can take messy skirmishes, she can isolate targets, she can fight for an extended period of time, and everything is really coming together to make Leona feel fantastic at the moment. So we're just going to have a look at a little bit more of her build, and then we'll talk about how to really think about and find success on Leona in-game. Okay, so let's start off with her runes. And Aftershock is going to be a bit of a no-brainer for Leona. She really enjoys those extra resistances, getting into the action, hanging around, getting tanky, dealing damage, and Aftershock is just a perfect fit for her. Like I said, the Demolish is going to be really good on Leona at the moment. Now, Demolish kind of scales with how good you are at the champion, how confident you are that you're going to be finding opportunities to use Demolish. Like if you're struggling, if you're picking her up, if you're losing a lot, if your matchup is like really, really bad, then maybe Demolish won't feel as consistent. But if you're doing the right things, you'll find opportunities to hit the tower. You'll do a lot of damage. I've seen thousands of tower damage with this rune if you're kind of doing the right things, and I think it's a great option for Leona. You can consider Font of Life as a replacement if you want a little bit more consistency, but I would really recommend playing around with Demolish. For the rest of the Resolve page, we're going to go Bone Plating and Unflinching. These are just runes that have been performing the most consistently for myself. You can consider second wind here instead of bone plating, but I've started to prefer bone plating in most, if not all, matchups, and unflinching was recently changed to just be a little bit more valuable as well. And for the secondary runes, we're always going to be going Hex Flash and Cosmic Insight so that we can have our flash up as much as possible, and then we can use our Hex Flash to find creative engage angles, whether it's from Fog of War and bot bushes, or whether it's around the middle of the map or over walls and from camps and stuff like that. It really helps her to have that extra creativity to find engages and to have more uptime when she does want to engage. There are people who like to play around with Sudden Impact and Relentless Hunter, but I really recommend that you just stick to the inspiration and not get too crazy with that. For the rune shards, we're going to be going Ability Haste, Scaling Health, and Flat Health, just as a recommendation. You don't really need the movement speed shard from this, so that's something that I was playing around, but I've just felt that movement speed is not that important with the new season. You can just build a lot of stats, a lot of combat stats. You're stat checking people. Home guard is getting you around the map. You're staying a little bit more in lane, and so we want those combat stats to back us up. Now, the reason that we're going flat health instead of scaling health for the third rune shard here is so that you can do just that. Right? You really want to be able to stat check and do a bunch of fighting and engaging early on. You don't want to wait until the scaling health outscales the flat health. You really want to make things happen early on, and you're going to see examples of that in the gameplay examples later on in the video. But this is by far the most consistent rune setup for me. Now, for the items, there's going to be pretty little creativity or variation here, but that's not due to a lack of power or anything. So our support quest item is always going to be Bloodsong. Fantastic item for Leona. She can proc it so easily. It acts as a sheen to do a little bit more damage, and it gives that damage amp, softening people up for future damage from any sources, so you can get some crazy numbers on Bloodsong. She can proc it really easily with her Q whenever she wants. And then, of course, Bandle Pipes. This is just one of the most broken items in the game at the moment. And so we're just going to be basically building this and rushing this first for most of our games. When Riot does eventually nerf this, we might have to revisit the priority on this. I feel like we still will build this item. It's just not going to be as broken. But giving that AoE attack speed to everyone nearby and giving yourself attack speed and move speed to keep chasing forwards is going to be really useful for Leona. Now, you can see that I've just shown brown boots here, just tier 1 boots. Again, in order to be able to just stat check and have as many combat stats as possible, we don't really want to rush tier 2 boots too quickly, right? Like in past seasons, it's been more important to run around, to roam towards mids, to be a part of these early fights as much as you can and build move speed to be able to do that, to get to that grubs fight. It's just not that important nowadays. The bot quest the ADC quest is very overpowered. You want to hang around in lane as much as possible so that you can facilitate your ADC getting their quest. You can slow down the enemy ADC getting their quest. And yeah, if you're building too much move speed, that's money rather spent on combat stats so you can keep dominating and playing for lane. The other thing is that roam timers are just a little bit harder to come by with the new season. With home guards, you think that you have a roam timer, but then suddenly everyone is back in lane immediately and your ADC is under a bit of pressure and they're going to need your help pretty quickly as well. Plates are on towers the whole time, and so it can be a little bit more expensive to roam even later on into the game. So I recommend just really playing to dominate lane, and your runes and your items can kind of match that. But anyway, back to the completed items. We're going to be going Bandle, tier 1 boots, and then Protoplasm Harness. This is feeling like a really strong item on Leona. I'm going to show you guys a quick example of that now. Here we are on Leona. We've got Protoplasm. We're really chunked. We apply Aftershock and press our W, and so we have a bunch of resistances. We get in range of Protoplasm to proc. And we started the fight at around 30%, and we're ending the fight at around 80%. So it can be a little bit inconsistent, but if you go in and you apply Aftershock and W and you reach that threshold, you're going to heal up. It's going to be quite ridiculous. So fantastic item for Leona currently. Okay, so after Protoplasm, then we can consider completing our tier 2 boots. It's almost always going to be Boots of Swiftness. Sometimes you can go Merc Treads if they have a lot of CC and you really just need that tenacity, but it's a bit more of an expensive option and you don't really need it as much. Like you can buffer your E through CC. You can just kind of stat check through CC a lot of the time as well. So I recommend mainly staying to Swifties on her. And then you can consider which Kindle Gem support item you want afterwards. You can go Zeeks if you're against more ranged champions where you want that ultimate uptime as much as possible. You can go Locket when you're against melee options, melee opponents a little bit more so that you can just provide that defense and be able to stat check a bit better. I've actually played around with Zeeks being built a little bit earlier, sometimes immediately after Bandle Pipes against ranged matchups, just to have that ultimate up as much as humanly possible, and it's cheaper than Protoplasm. So that's something that you can even consider as well. But basically, we're going to abuse this item, we're going to abuse this item, we're going to abuse this item, and then we're just building Kindle Gem items on the back end to round out our builds and to stack a bunch of health and a bunch of ability haste. I just chucked an Oblivion Orb in here just in case that your team does need heal cut. Don't go Bramble Vest. You want to offensively apply heal cut when people need the healing. They're going to be running away. They're not going to be hitting you, and this is going to be more consistent to provide that heal cut. Otherwise, there's not going to be too much variation for runes and items, so this is basically what we're going to be looking to run on Leona at the moment. We're going to talk about her reference points now. So these are basically points that you want to keep in mind when you are playing Leona. Like, what makes Leona Leona? What are you really trying to do? How are you going to have a successful game on Leona? So what you really want to consider when you are playing Leona is that you're a fantastic stat checker. Your champion does not have much mobility or shields. You're just there. And so if you're able to stat check, kind of like a Juggernaut in a way from top lane, like if you're able to just get up close and personal and start a fist fight and start stat checking people, then she's going to be a great one for that. It's just there's a double-edged sword to that, right? Like if you get a little bit caught out of position, then your kit isn't really going to help you to get out very easily. You don't want to just run away in a straight line and slowly die. You kind of have to get in there and you have to stat check, but that's part of her identity. She has fantastic extended fights. The main reason for this is her incredibly short Q cooldown, which is one of the shortest cooldowns for a CC ability in the entire game, I would go as far as to say. So she can really spam out a lot of her Qs, and you'll see examples of that in the gameplay section where we're really posturing to make sure that we land more and more Qs. If you just find one Q and then you leave, that Q is going to do much less than, let's say, a Nautilus hook, right? But if you get that second Leona Q, or even that third one, then your champion becomes incredibly powerful. The other thing about Leona specifically is that she can access backline where other engagers can struggle to do so. You think about Nautilus, who has his hook, and if he tries to engage on the backline, his ult is not like the longest range and is very slow, and his hook gets blocked by champions and frontliners in front of the carriers that you want to target. If you think about Rel, she has very low engage range, so she needs to be really creative or have flash or have a flank angle. But Leona, she can actually threaten backline in a more organized situation. Her E travels through everyone and hits the last target, and she travels to the last target, and her ult, non-committal, pretty long range, pretty fast, so she can put a lot of threat on the backline. So she can thrive in more organized settings, and she can also still find picks and engage and be decisive and thrive in the chaos that other engagers do as well. She is also going to just be a great champion to pick up and learn because she teaches and rewards engager fundamentals. So this is not as much as, you know, why she's broken, but this is just why I think she's a fantastic champion to play in general. If you do the right thing, you're going to get rewarded. If you engage at the wrong time, your kit is not really going to help you out too much. So I just recommend, even if you're trying to get better at the game and getting better at engagers and engaging, she's going to be a fantastic option for you for that. So in terms of how you are going to be picking her, the reason that she is one of the best supports at the moment is because she's surprisingly blind pickable. I didn't want to include like a Braum or an Alistair that might not be as blind pickable, even if they do thrive in certain situations. Leona can thrive in most situations. She is relatively blindable. She can have some tricky matchups, but she always has options. And that's the beautiful thing about her, is that she can still team fight. She can thrive in a lot of different situations. Just quickly, in terms of how we're approaching different types of matchups, if you're against ranged matchups, of course, we're going to try to kill them. We're going to be very happy to put our flash on cooldown and use our Cosmic plus Hex Flash combo over here as much as we can to get on top of them. We're going to be using Sweeper, controlling the bushes, and finding creative angles to really get the fights going. And if there's not an engage angle, we're going to have to be quite conservative with how we're posturing in the lane to make sure we're preserving our health. So you're either doing everything or nothing. You're either sending it to the end of the earth and killing them, or you're just chilling out and you're just preserving your health and you're waiting for the right moment when you have cooldowns or when they're out of position or when the wave is in a reasonable spot for you to start fighting. If you're against melee matchups, then it's a bit different, right? Like then you become that stat checker. Then it's less about like psychotically flashing on them, and it's more about just standing your ground and trusting that your Q is just an incredibly powerful tool for your champion. You're going to be happy to just face check a melee champion, press Q on them, and then posture forwards and find another Q and find another Q, and then you're going to start to kill them. So you want to really lean into stat checking, to extending the fights, and don't let the fights stay really short, because then your one Q is not going to do as much necessarily. So without yapping too much more about how we're going to approach her theoretically, I want to show a few examples of gameplay for myself playing Leona. So let's get into it. Okay, so we're going to have a look at a ranged matchup example here. I wanted to bring a VOD where it's not like a complete stomp, where everyone is performing relatively well in the lane. So here we're a Aphelios Leona against the Smolder and the Nami. Now it's very important that you're doing exactly this at level 1. You need to be sprinting to mid-bush from Fountain. You need to start Sweeper. No ifs, ands, or buts. You need to control the lane immediately. You need to understand the difference between a Leona in vision and a Leona in a bush, especially level 1. If she gets to occupy fog in a bush, she's scary. If she's out in the open, she's a melee minion. She can't do anything. And sometimes it's worth trading your health to be able to secure some pressure in the lane. But basically, you want to try to hit level 2, and then you start to have threat. And we're trying to get to level 2 as reasonably as possible here. You can also see that I immediately sprinted here from Fountain, so that even if they ward immediately, I still see the ward, and then I have information to work with. I don't have to like run into the bush and then, predict that they may have a ward here and then sweep, and then they don't have a ward, and then I've wasted my Sweeper, and then they ward later. So I spot the ward, and now it's about trying to get that ward cleared without taking too much damage. So I activate Sweeper, I enter the bush, I take a bit of health damage. It's fine. You can see I don't hit the ward here, because if I hit the ward, then I'm going to take damage from the Smolder, right? So I allow my ADC to clear the ward. Again, in your games, maybe people are just like AFK by their jungler or spreading for a non-existent invade, and maybe none of this is going to be that relevant to you, but be prepared to take and earn the space in the lane here so that you can actually play it out a little bit. So now I've taken a bit of damage, and they've rewarded. So now they've used both wards, and now it's like, okay, well, I can't sweep that one out. I've already used my Sweeper. Unfortunately, my ADC griefs me here a little bit. He runs into the bush, and then he orders from the bush, and so now I'm revealed, and now I'm a Leona without fog, and so I take a lot of free damage. So just PSA to ADCs, stay the hell out of our bushes. But anyway, right now, the reality of the lane is going to be that we're most likely going to lose the shove, because I don't have control of mid-bush. I can't really find auto attacks and execute the minions, and they're going to use their range advantage and use their shove tools. And so now I'm just thinking about, okay, I'm just going to minimize gracefully. I'm going to make sure I don't take any extra damage. So I'm trying to find windows to like hit the wave, but then not be in range for them to hit me. And then I dip back to the bush whenever I can, trying to be as imposing as possible as a level 1 Leona against ranged champions with no mid-bush control, trying my best. But at the end of the day, I want to preserve my health, and so that when I do have level 2, when I do have meaningful threat, I can actually use it. Unfortunately, take a little bit of damage from the Nami there, but not too much. And now we're going to hit level 2, right? The melee's on the second wave, and the enemies acknowledge this and they respond, and then they get out in time. So fair play to them. They've been playing the first 2 waves very well as well. Quite a high-level lane that we're a part of here. So now I'm asking my ADC to go and ward the Phalites, just so we can get some vision, and then we can just keep playing to dominate 2v2 as much as we can. We go for an E, we miss. My priority right now is going to be to just try to crash this wave so that we can get as much space in the lane as possible, right? I don't want the wave to be stuck here the whole time, and then the enemies are quite close to their tower, and then I have no real freedom to E, and I have no space to find multiple Qs. That's the thing about Leona, right? It's like that second Q is a huge deal. If you don't have space to find second Q, then you quite oftentimes just like lose a lot of threat that you would want. So you want to try and get the wave crashed, let the wave die, and let the following wave not bunch up, and let the following wave sprint straight here so that it's a neutral wave state, and then you have space to really fight. Now, achieving that can be tricky, right? But that's our goal. That's what Paradise would look like for us. So the faster you shove, the less the enemy wave is likely to bunch up, and then the more space you'll have on the subsequent waves. Unfortunately, enemy wave bunches up big time. We didn't shove the wave fast enough. It is what it is. So now we're going to try to blow this wave up, right? You can see I'm shove pinging here. I don't mind if I take a bit of damage here, but I want to kill this wave in time so that we have some space to actually fight. The number one reason that my students struggle to find successful engages is when they don't manage the wave appropriately. So they just slowly hit minions here, and then the wave gets stuck here, the enemies get stuck here, and no room to ever do anything, and then it gets really awkward. So here, this time, we're going to have a little bit more space to work with. Right here, what I'm trying to do is proc demolish. I actually didn't know that. I guess it only activates at a certain period in the game, but I went for auto Q auto here. It's only 2 minutes 50 in the game, and it didn't proc, so maybe it turns online at like 3 minutes or 5 minutes or something. But anyway, we're going to have a little bit of space to work with here. Again, not as much as we would like. It's hard to just blow up waves without contest from the enemies too much. So, I mean, at the very least, we have bush control. We have first move. We're getting tower plates. We can crash into base when we need to. And meanwhile, even though we don't have that much room to work with, the enemy ADC's bleeding last hits, as we can see, is farming with spells. And then if they ever step up a little bit too far, and I think that I can engage on them and not be in tower range, I'm going to pull the trigger. So if they ever misstep, I'm ready. I won't be able to find second Q here, of course, but I'm pouncing on this opportunity. And you can see the clicks, right? Like you can see the posturing, like I know he's in trouble. I'm a stat checker. I'm on a range champion. This is going to be good. I'm going to be clicking forwards up here to catch his flash so that my W damage, my aftershock damage, my auto attacks, potentially my second Q can come through still. He ends up getting away with 1 health and no flash, but it's a really favorable trade, right? I still have my flash. I'm always happy for volatility, right? Like if we take a bunch of damage and they take a bunch of damage, that's good for us because we have the kill threat and they have to be scared. Extra bonus, as you can see, our jungler was clearing down, and so even more volatility is a great idea here. And using the fog to help find these engage angles is a big deal. So now it's just Smolder's 1 health, no flash, my jungler's nearby. I'm going to stun the Nami and try to E the Smolder here so we make sure we kill him, and then maybe we get Nami's flash, maybe we don't, whatever. So cool, we kind of set up a kill there, and then we're going to look for a crash into base. Now, a lot of times when you're playing Leona, you want to be prepared for when your jungler doesn't pass to you, and then you're not going to make as explosive, aggressive decisions in the 2v2. Maybe our jungler passed up here, and maybe the enemy jungler passed down here, and then we'll play appropriately. We'll be less kind of up here. We'll be more kind of hovering around here, making sure We see the enemy jungle. We're not going to be engaging forwards and dying. And so don't feel like you have to kill bot lane 2v2. Sometimes it's just not meant to be because of how the junglers are pathing. And then you'll just get through weak side, and then you'll end up running around and engaging and killing people afterwards. Turns out in this game, our jungler path down here, we set it up. Cool. We're going to crash away. We're going to find a base timer. And then you're going to see that we're building combat stats here. We're not going to build more than brown boots, hopefully, in this game. Sprinting back bot, couldn't care less about the rest of the map. We've got a job to do here. We're going to win bot lane. Okay, and so now we're in a pretty commanding position, right? The wave's pushing into... Smolder has no flash. If he wants to contest a minion, I'll look to engage. I don't even mind taking a little bit of damage from the tower here. You can see I was kind of juking forwards to try and get more damage. But again, like I said, volatility is fine. I take damage. He takes damage. He's going to die. Putting a lot of pressure whenever he wants to walk up. I'm making him feel the pressure that he might get engaged on. And again, here, I'm not hitting this ward. From his perspective, he wants to damage me when I go for the ward. From my perspective, I know his perspective. I'm not going to give it to him for free. I'm just going to look to damage him instead. But he spaces it very well, and I don't want to take too much free damage. So I end up saying, you know what? I didn't want the ward anyway. But he's really incentivized to look to last hit the cannon. If he does, I'm going to kill him. He does, I'm going to kill him. I don't even need a flash to get on top of him. And so then we're just starting to snowball now, right? Like we understood his psychology. We managed the wave reasonably well. We're going to look for another crash into base and just kind of look to rinse and repeat as much as possible and start to really dominate the 2v2. Here I do have Demolish. So boom, boom, boom. Bunch of free damage there. And then we're going to go about our business and find a recall timer. I still have flash. He still doesn't have flash. Right now, what I was communicating is even though we have unspent gold and we're kind of low, I think we can just kill him again. But once my ADC doesn't respond and get on the same page as me, then I'm just gonna say, okay, we can just base instead. But then Nami does a good job of like running forwards and canceling my base. So not ideal. And there was probably a window here where we could have cheesed and just killed them again, but not the end of the world. Combat stats, you can see here. We're rushing Kindle Gem, more health, ability haste. Killed 2v2, nothing else matters. And let's see what we can get done. Back to lane, home guards getting us back pretty quickly. I'm pinging that I have my flash. Smolder still doesn't have flash. If he can test cannon, again, I'm going to kill him. If he doesn't, he loses cannon. Beautiful. I'm pinging cannon. You can see that. He's going to walk forwards for cannon. If not, he loses cannon. He's close enough to get XP. That's too close for my liking. I'm going to flash on his head and he's dead. Decisive. Always happy to flash on these ranged champions when the opportunity presents itself. And so it's hard for them to play the game, isn't it? Unless they get bailed out by some of their teammates, it's very hard for them to figure out what to do here. And now I'm just going to decisively collapse on this skirmish here. So killed the enemy ADC, used my spells on the wave to help my ADC shove, and now I'm just going to move to the action. There's a fight near me. I'm going to move there. If there was a fight on top side, I probably won't move there. And now it's just a little bit of execution. You can see that I'm spamming a move on Mordekaiser's little icon here from his ult so that I can stun him as quickly as possible. And I just want to be a stat checker, right? I'm just kind of in the thick of things. I want to press my spells, but I also want to make sure my E lands. You're only going to get one E in a skirmish. You've got to make it count. So look how patient I needed to be here, and I was. I don't want to E the Z, right? Because he has all of his mobility. But then once I was comfortable in landing my E, especially my melee range E, which will follow people when they move, then I'm going to chain CC. So again, I'm not going to cast my E here because he has W, he has ult, he has all of that stuff. But here, when he CC'd and I melee E him, it doesn't matter what he does. I'm going to appear on top of him afterwards, and then I'm going to Q, and then I'm going to ult, lock him down, one-shot that guy. So execution, incredibly important. Don't breeze past these parts in your game. If you want success, you've got to be able to fight well. You've got to understand when it's appropriate to rush or to cast your E really quickly and when you need to hold it. At the end of the day, you need your E to land. You need to find multiple Qs. We're just going to have a look at one more window in this laning phase here. Back to lane, still stacking combat stats here. I don't care about grubs. If the enemy support roams to grubs, I'm going to kill his ADC and take his tower. If the enemy support doesn't roam to grubs, I might still do the same thing. Really slowing down the shove here so that if they want to respect their bleeding minions constantly, we're developing a really enormous ADC lead here. Creating a bunch of fog. My jungler is playing on my side of the map, so I'm going to have a little bit more confidence to sweep and ward and do stuff like that. But again, I'm not venturing too far from bot lane here. I got my eyes set on the prize. I'm considering ulting the Smolder there, decide against it, have the presence of mind to dodge the Nami Q on the back end. Pinging on the way, I want my jungler to just come and dive bot lane here. And now I believe that Nami is out of position. Now, how would you sequence your spells? Pretty important decision to make here, right? Should I ult her? Should I E her? Do I need to or not? I decide I can just run menacingly towards her and I can cut her off and just get in Q range. And now she is stunned. She's in melee range of a Leona and she has no ult, whereas I could have potentially missed a ranged E or put my ult on cooldown when I didn't really need to. So I just wanted to keep my options open initially. Again, you can be quite non-committal with Leona's Qs, but you're only going to get one E. You're only going to get one R. You have to make it count. So I don't mind posturing, finding Qs, putting pressure, forcing cooldowns, and then kind of going from there. Hopefully we can see the importance of bush control, of controlling from the fog, of doing everything or nothing. Either there's an engage and you're decisively pouncing on that opportunity, or there's not an engage and you're conceding gracefully and you're staying healthy and you are in the mindset of finding opportunities to fight and to just really execute on fights as well. And so the next section where we're going to have a look at the mid to late game, that's going to give you a really good insight into exactly how to fight. But this was more so how you can approach Season 16 laning phase on Leona, especially a ranged matchup. Okay, so now we're in the mid to late game on Leona. We're on a different game here, of course. And generally what you're looking to do in the mid to late game, to really break it down simply, be it fights and fight well. This is going to apply to most supports. You're going to be at fights if you're pressuring with your jungle. You're going to fight well if you execute your kit well, if you understand your identity, what kind of fight you do want to take or not. It's going to be dependent on the game with what kind of champions around you exist as well. But that's basically the main focus. I see way too many people stress about objectives and, you know, this and that. Just be at fights and fight well. It's a fighting game right now. Value, micro value execution. And the other thing about Leona is she thrives in finding picks and creating chaos and thriving in that, right? So you don't want to just kind of hang around the middle of the map, constantly asking the enemies if they want an ARAM. You want to create and isolate picks, find targets to paint a cross on their head and kill them, right? You want to be in fog. You want to find vision to catch people in rotation. You want to collapse on side lanes when an opportunity presents itself, stuff like that. So right now, actually what's going to happen is I'm just kind of pathing through mid and looking to collapse on the Smolder, who is pushing up quite far, or looking to just kind of counter jungle with my Z and just kind of get things going, be at the action. If my jungle's pressuring, something's going to happen there. But what ends up happening is my Syndra finds an EQ stun onto the Viego, and then I immediately pounce with no hesitation, and I ult him. Oftentimes, if you just don't hesitate, then things are going to work out. You can see that my ult cooldown is very low as well, so it was we're either going to kill him or he's going to exit with 1 health and no ult and no flash or whatever. So be decisive when an opportunity does present itself. Be ready to adapt to what happens. Don't tunnel. You've got to stay fluid and adaptive in League of Legends. I know it's easier said than done, but you're going to learn to do that by just being really decisive and pouncing with no hesitation when there might be something. Okay, so now I'm just trying to take space with my body and with my cues and then find the right time to fully engage. I'm cutting back. I'm baiting out Xin Zhao's ultimate. I'm preserving my E. And then when I feel like it's the right time to really engage, when they've extended a little bit too far, when my Syndra is collapsing as well, then we can reconsider. But you can see the stat checking element of Leona, right? I kind of held my ground. I didn't purely run away in a straight line. I applied Aftershock. I got my W. I stunned. I annoyed. I baited. Again, I'm not too fussed. I feel like we can kind of fight this out. Unfortunately, my Syndra puts her EQ on cooldown, so then we just lose a little bit of pressure. Not as much to do. I'm going to try and stay in fog. You can see my positioning here, right? I want them to maybe make a mistake. Maybe they think he's by himself at our base and he runs forwards, and then I E and R and Q and isolate in one shot. I'm just making it more likely that I find something that works. It's not like every time you go in fog and try to be creative, something's going to work, right? You just constantly ask tough questions of your opponents, and sometimes they're going to collapse. Okay, we find a base here. I'm going to be beelining it to the Xin Zhao to see if I can get something done. If not, then not. That's fine. Don't overthink it. Just try to be at the action. And now here I am. A right place, right time to execute. He E's to me, and then he immediately flashes away. I decide that he's not meaningfully out of position anymore, right? He's got his teammates here. I don't want to like dive forwards and then we don't end up getting the kill and then they kind of turn it back on us. So I'm like, okay, I mean, you're chunky, you have no flash. I didn't commit anything. That's fine with me. But I do think the Sona is out of position. Squishy, a mobile range champion. I've got my ult. I'm happy to use it. I find the stun. I know my Syndra has ult. Boom. Easy one shot. Decisive. Happy to use my ults quite frivolously, quite freely. Whenever I have ult and I can get value out of it, I'm going to look to use it. And especially on the mobile range champions. That's our bread and butter on Leona. And now I'm going to get some deep vision. I love warding camps. They're OP. You're always going to get valuable information with camp wards. You can see here I'm asking my teammates to shove the side lane here. A dragon is coming up. It's quite an important dragon, so maybe I shouldn't have, but I want side lane pressure to give ourselves some options to find picks again, so that we're not just relying on mispositionings around the middle of the map. And then I actually decide that, you know what, maybe we should contest dragon. Maybe we're ahead enough that we can do the Rift Herald, and then we can still kind of shift down and kill them afterwards. So I'm going to do my best here to just see if we can get something done down here as well. I'm saying fight. I want to fight. Now I included this part for common mistakes from engagers. Right now I'm tunneling, right? You can see my Z on the minimap here. He doesn't want to fight at all. He's just sprinting to mid tower. And then I'm full sending it. I'm putting my one and only E on cooldown, and then I just get one shot. And then the enemies clean us up, and then you can see I'm realizing, wait, why is my jungle not here? Oops, I tunneled, I messed up. And so that's just the duality of playing engagers, right? Like if you do a good engage, you carry. If you do a bad engage, you throw. It is what it is. It's important to just move on from these situations and not to lose confidence and be like, oh man, I did a bad engage. I don't want to do that again. I'm never going to engage again. And then you're useless, right? You just got to move on. Like mistakes happen. Obviously, right there, if my Z is not fighting with us, then I'm just going to chill. Okay, so back on the map now. Not too much to do on this window of downtime. We're just going to get some vision down. Going to wait for my ADC to shove this wave. I'm going to get a mid ward. Mid ward is a very powerful ward. Plopping a ward down in the middle of the lane there without them spotting it. I'm pinging. Hopefully by now you can figure out why I'm pinging this. I want my Syndra to shove, so I have options away from the middle of the map, away from ARAMs. I want to pick, collapse, and isolate targets. I'm moving up to my Syndra. I spot out the enemies. My jungle is still not active, so I'm not going to overplay my hand right now, but when my jungle is active, then I can meaningfully move and control their jungle and threaten whoever shows on the side. My mid ward is doing some great numbers there. You can see that we see what they're doing around the middle of the map. And you can see my attention is on top side here. I want to isolate someone. I'm micromanaging my jungle to link up with me. I believe we're in fog with the path that we took and with where we have seen the enemies the whole time now. And now it's just a question of whether the enemies mess up, whether they respect this possibility or not. They have to be incredibly respectful if they do. I'm being a fog warrior. I'm pinging here because we saw Sona kind of move through their jungle, so maybe I can catch Sona if she moves too close. I notice Viego step too close instead. Easy one shot. Wouldn't have happened without us looking for that pick and embracing our champion's identity and understanding what kind of fights that we can really thrive in. And then I'm back into fog. I'm hovering. If the enemies are slightly out of position, I'll collapse. And if not, then not. But again, the enemies are not going to play perfectly. This is tremendously difficult to play against. We notice Smolder press W. So Smolder's somewhere here. So I'm going to ping on the way. Smolder is here. Now he's isolated. He's meaningfully by himself, right? Remember that moment here where I considered jumping on the Xin Zhao, but I didn't because it's the middle of the map. People are nearby. No one's nearby on the side of the map, right? Just decisively collapse on an isolated target. Leona's a fantastic tower diver as well. You can just kind of do it. And now I'm being really greedy. I don't even want to ult. I want to save my ult. I want to see if I can just get into E range. I can. We kill him. Easy. Now, the enemies do a pretty good job of responding to what we did here. They shove mid, they shove bot. Fair play. This is high elo. But we got a couple kills. We got a tower. We got some vision control in their red side quadrant. So pretty happy overall. Okay, so there's going to be a bit of a window of downtime here where, again, my jungle, you can see he's not active on the map. He's not ready to do much. I'm micromanaging my ADC to shove. I'm creating fog. I'm moving around in fog. I'm trying to be sneaky. You're not going to surprise and isolate anyone if they know where you are. Keeping my options open, seeing if they're ever going to misstep or not. Now I end up kind of leaving this area because I don't really want to leave my Syndra, my immobile carry mage isolated on the side of the map. So I also want to allow her to kind of get her things going. Turns out that she does end up kind of moving down here. So that's good. So now, there's going to be a dragon upcoming. We have some pretty good vision control around the area. We have options to isolate and pick targets before an ARAM happens. Look how much and look how often we're in fog. Unfortunately, my ADC based, so we just have less freedom than we would otherwise like at this stage. But we're still hanging around. And then we notice some activity down here. We start to move. YZ gets one shot. Is what it is. We're going to move on with our life. Our response is, oh, well, no way we're getting this dragon. Let's concede it. Let's not run in and contest 3v4 with no jungle and die and throw the entire game. Okay, so now they're looking to threaten the Baron. So I'm happy to fight. Let's be at the action and let's fight as well as we can. That's just the question. Can we fight as well as we can? Now, this is going to be quite a tricky fight to think about. First of all, they're cornered, right? They got their backs to the wall. They need to kind of stand their ground and fight. I don't want to give them an easy opening to start fighting hard. So I'm actually going to play to peel a little bit more here. I'm going to let my Lucian kind of mess with them if he wants to ult. I'm going to let my immobile mage put a lot of pressure on them with their spells. The only way they can kind of get out of this mess is if they find an angle to just jump on one of my carries, blow them up, get a Viego reset, and kind of go from there. And this is like the champ mastery aspect, where there's that next level when you understand that you should just play your engager like a disengager, like an enchanter, like a peeler. So I non-committally ult just to put them under pressure into the pit, and I'm holding my E and I'm just bodyguarding with my Q. I'm just going to be spamming Qs out here, let my carries use their range and their cooldowns. Look how rough of a spot they're in. I'm still peeling. I still understand that their melees are going to want to jump forwards, right? So now Jax jumps forward with his E. I'm going to flash away so that Viego's ult misses, so that Jax's E misses. And now that's kind of all they had. They threw the kitchen sink at us. We successfully spaced and disengaged. And now I'm still spamming Qs. And now I decide it's time to full send with my E. And then we can start to clean up. If I went too fast, I might have gotten one shot. My Syndra might have died. It could have gone completely differently. Just hanging around here for my Hex Flash so I can maybe keep killing people on the back end. Okay. So we turned a pretty awkward spot into a fine spot. They got the objectives. We got a bunch of kills. Fantastic. Let's have a look at one more moment of this game. I lied. We're going to have a look at two more moments of this game. So this first moment, I wanted to show a little bit more of an even number organized team fight where we don't have a ginormous strategic advantage. And then you can see what kind of decisions you can make. If there's a chance to isolate a target, then you can absolutely consider that. I believe that Zen is just a little bit isolated here. Right? Like he's got a bunch of ranged squishy champions here that can't really help him out at all. And so I'm going to decisively pull the trigger and say, hey, Zen, you're isolated. Dump a bunch of cooldowns onto him. And then he basically gets one shot. And then I can kind of fight on the back end afterwards as well. So there's a time and place, right, to be reactive and to peel. And there's a time and place to be decisive, to isolate a target, and to kind of get the ball rolling. There's one more moment that I wanted to show in this game. And that's going to be coming up on the top side over here. So what happens is we are going to try to play around the fog here. And then we're going to be decisive with our ults, right? We're happy to use our ults to get things going, to force flashes or to get a pick. I believe that Sona's just out of position. I don't even need an ult. So I Hex Flash and E, right? Big deal. Can't do that without Hex Flash. And we pounce on the Zin. And then I believe he's out of position. I want to keep chasing. Unfortunately, I just missed that stun part of my ult here. And so he ends up creating a bunch of space. And then we notice him on a ward that we got down earlier. You can see how decisive I am with my pings and my communication and my body language. Now it's just about landing my E. I know that he knows, right? I know that he knows that I'm here. And so I need to land my E. I need to figure out how he's going to behave, right? We can see that he's moving like this to create as much space for my E as possible. I'm just going to try to feel it out and land it when I think I can. Turns out I do land it. We get a kill there. It's the decisiveness, right? It's pouncing on these opportunities when they do present themselves. So, yeah, hopefully this gives a bit of insight into how you can approach the mid to late game as Leona, her strengths, some of her weaknesses, and how decisive you need to be and really using and abusing the fog. But most of all, be it fights, fight well. All right, the number 2 champion on our list today is Bard. I believe he is the second best solo queue support at the moment, and there are going to be many different reasons for this. So let's just have a quick discussion about why I believe he is really, really strong, maybe even a little bit overpowered at the moment. First things first, he is also going to be abusing Bloodsong. There's a bit of a trend that's going to develop here that the best supports in solo queue are using Bloodsong very well. He can apply it very easily. It's natural for him to find auto attacks in his fighting and his trades. He is the best abuser of Bandle Pipes. He makes excellent use of Bandle Pipes. He can apply it so easily when he has collected a bunch of chimes so that his meeps apply the slow, and then it gives an AoE attack speed for everyone around him. It also gives him attack speed and move speed, which is really, really useful for him to do bad things and to wreak havoc. He can reach a stage where he just 1v1s many champions. Maybe not as much in Season 16 with everyone else being a little bit more powerful, but you can still do a tremendous amount of damage with the whole rune and item setup that we're going to have, and with your passive scaling and doing more damage and more slows and more range and all of that good stuff. Generally, what Bard struggles with is laning phase, right? Because he's designed and his kit is indexed in towards roaming around, finding number advantages and skirmishing and picking rather than dominating lane. But there's always a rune page and an item build for Bard to make use of, right? Like he can just build anything he wants, basically. If there's a strong item somewhere, he'll use it well. If there's a strong rune somewhere, he'll use it well. And so his builds just helps him to find a place in the meta. This rune setup that we will talk about is going to help him in his weak early lane, and then his items are going to be very powerful and significant for the rest of the game. He can also make the pace of game too fast for other ranged champions. So he's really going to thrive in the pace of game, and he can increase the pace of game. There's a lot of fights going on. He can be there. He can cause mess and chaos, and he can just overwhelm other ranged champions who are just going to be slower around the map and have kits that aren't as explosive for skirmishes and picks. So he's happy against ranged matchups, and then against melee matchups, he can play more to like disrupt what they want to do. He can be more reactive. He can ask tough questions of them. Like he can start auto attacking and queuing and poking, and then kind of like Eing out, use his range and his damage advantage. He's also going to really hard outscale melee matchups as well. So he's very blind pickable. The only tricky thing about him is he's so incredibly hard to master that that's the main factor if you're going to have success on Bard or not. Do you know how to play him really well? Do you know exactly what he can and can't do? Do you know his limits? Do you know what to say yes to and what to say no to? So hopefully with the example section, you can get a little bit of a better sense of that. But he's a very difficult champion to really perform on. Apart from that, just a quick chat about his identity, like what makes Bard Bard. He's one of, if not the best roamer in the entire game. And so when you do have opportunities to roam around and link up and, you know, get to a fight before others, you want to be really decisive and make sure that you're not hesitating. You're leaning into his identity. You're not just hanging back and letting ARAMs take place naturally. He's always just really strong in solo queue because of the nature of solo queue, right? Like he's such a great champion to have in your pool, just in general as a solo queue League of Legends support player. There's always going to be a time and a place for him in a lot of different metas. He can create and thrive in chaos, and that's just basically inherently what solo queue can be a lot of the time. He has non-committal engage, so this is quite useful because the more committal a champion is, the less margin for error you have, right? You picture a Rel or an Alistair or, I don't know, a Pike or something, and they're trying to jump in and get the fight going, and then if they mess up, they're dead and they're useless, right? But the good thing about Bard is you can just play on your cooldowns. Your next Q will come up. If you miss your ult, you're not dead. You can still be useful and play from range. So that's quite handy as well to get into picking him up. He scales incredibly well with his passive, so that's just worth keeping in mind. And he just has such an enormous skill ceiling. He can basically do anything. He can team fight, he can skirmish, he can roam, he can lane. It just depends, again, how good you are at the champion. So before we jump into some gameplay footage of him, I just want to talk about a few points of reference to really orient yourself when you are going to be playing Bard. In laning phase, you really want to find short, concise trades. I realize I haven't talked about the build, but we'll do that after the reference points. short, concise trades. He's going to thrive off of playing on his electrocute cooldown, right? Like when you have your passive empowered auto attack, and when you have your Q, you're going to apply electrocute, you're going to apply cheap shot, you cut the trade there, and then that's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for the lane. You can also just look to scale through lane. You're going to do this by using the bushes, by right-clicking minions, shoving, and that allows you to find base opportunities, roam opportunities, and stay healthy by using the bushes as well. So like what I notice a lot of my Bard students do is they just try to do too much too often. They're like running in 1v2, trying to trade the whole time. They're looking for like these really fancy Q angles. That's not the time or place to really dominate the game as Bard. Keep your trades short and concise. Keep in mind that you're not designed to dominate lane, and just take disciplined trades. Once you're out of lane, you can be a psycho. You can run around, you can try to kill people, but lane is not the place to be psychotic. Lane is the place to be disciplined and more precise. Otherwise, nothing Bard specific, but as the game progresses, you really want to be at the fights, and you really want to fight well, and you really want to understand what type of fights favor Bard. I mentioned it a little bit already, but you want to be decisive in isolating targets. You want to create number advantage. You want to collapse. You want to communicate what you're really looking to do, and get your teammates on the same page to pounce on someone out of position, whether they're rotating in the jungle between lanes, whether they're on a side lane and then they're stranded and they're isolated. You want to really lean into that, because what happens in League is if you don't communicate your intent like this, ARAMs end up happening, right? Everyone just kind of groups up on objectives, and then you kind of lose a lot of the strategic advantage that you wanted to look for with Bard. Now, with all of that said, let's quickly talk about his runes and items. Starting with items, like we said, Bloodsong OP, Banner Pipes OP, he abuses this. And then Bard's item spikes are a big deal, and he has a lot of mobility inherently in his kit. So we are just going to stay on magical boots and not worry about tier 2 boots, especially with Season 16 as well. There's, Home Guards gets you around the map quicker. There's more importance on the laning phase anyway. So yeah, just stay magical boots here for a very long time. We're going to be going Banner Pipes and Leandries. I've tried a lot of different builds. This is the only build that feels reasonable. I don't like Deadman's. I think Helia into Diadem is awful. I can't believe that's the build that is running around. You can take my opinion, you can take other content creators' opinions, you can take your own feel into account, but I strongly believe that this is the best, and I have felt that this has given me the most success. So anyway, we'll go Banner Pipes, we'll go Leandries, and then we'll go kind of generic support tank items that help us to stay alive. Whether that's Locket afterwards or whether that's Protoplasm Harness afterwards. Honestly, the game's going to be over by the time you complete 2 or 3 full items anyway, so it's not going to be the biggest deal there. And then eventually, I would say after these 2 items, that's the most appropriate time to complete your tier 2 boots. And then it'll most of the time be boots of swiftness, although Mercury treads can be there as well if you need a lot of tenacity, or if they have a lot of AD, you can consider steel caps, but it's generally not the case. Rounding out the builds, you can chuck a redemption in there. If you need heal cut, you can chuck an Oblivion Orb in there. Again, Bard can build so many things. I haven't found the best time in playing around with more aggressive items. I think I've really appreciated just the combat and the power that these 3 items provide, and then just trying to survive as much and as long as possible on the back end. I wouldn't recommend playing around too much with Static Shiv or Wit's End or those other items. I feel like the game ends before we get to that stage, especially if we're building Bandle first, and then all of these expensive items on the back end is just going to take a little bit longer. So that's what I would recommend for items. For runes, there are going to be a couple of choices. The first one we're going to talk about is the Electrocute page. This should be your go-to. This really helps you to get through lane. It helps you to have high skirmishing threat throughout the game. We use it very easily with Q plus passive for Electrocute, and then Cheap Shot, Deep Ward, and Relentless Hunter. Last season, I was opting into the treasure or the bounty hunter, whatever it's called, to build Dead Man's Plate first, and then to complete all of our expensive items. I've pivoted to Relentless Hunter because Bandle Pipes is much cheaper. We don't really need that influx of gold, and then it just allows us to sit on magical boots for much longer and not feel too bad about it. For secondary runes, we're going to be going Magical Boots and Jack of All Trades. So Jack of All Trades was changed recently to give more immediate stacks to supports with that gold per 10 generation counting as a stack. So you start the game with 4 stacks with the Atlas support item, and then all you need to do is just build basically anything, and you're going to get 5 stacks. You're going to get an injection of adaptive force and ability haste. You don't really need to think or optimize too much about it. Just kind of build your items, play the game. You're going to be building resistances naturally through this item anyway, so you don't really have to work too hard just to start getting those stacks, and of course ability haste. There are some builds. I think the most popular on Lolalytics for Bard is like sorcery secondary. Don't recommend that. You are going to appreciate, of course, celerity and scorch, but I believe that this is just way too much value, especially if you're rushing items and you're not roaming around and rushing tier 2 boots as much. There's just too much value here. And then in terms of the rune shards, we're going to be going attack speed and double scaling health so that we can become that menace at the appropriate time of the game. I don't like building too much adaptive force early on in Bard's rune page. I think just kind of keeping the trades short, concise, and then getting through lane and then being an absolute menace later on makes the most sense for Bard. There is just one more setup that I want to talk about. This is going to be more of a defensive setup, as we can see here. And this is when you're just against so much engaged that all you really need to do is survive and peel and outscale, and Bard can do that. So if you're against, let's say, a Samira or a Callista, maybe even a Tristana, and they're paired with like a really aggressive support that wants to just kind of kill you a bunch of times, then you can just index into this more peel outscale setup. And this has actually won me some games, because there's no point in going to electrocute against a lane that's going to one-shot you if you get caught, when you can just lean into reacting, peeling, outscaling, surviving. So this you'll probably consider this maybe once or twice out of 10 games on Bard. But I mean, that's the entire idea, right? You can see here, there's a lot of defense. We're going to survive. 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 So be on the lookout for this. I have won some free games by just being super defensively oriented. And in terms of the itemization, Bloodsong is just so good on him. You can still consider Bloodsong if you want to just chill and peel, but Celestial is going to be pretty good in these types of games as well. And then, as you can see, we're delaying Leandri's by a big amount, right? We want Locket to survive. And then we're just building a bunch of health and resistances. We're going heal instead of ignite. So hopefully it's pretty clear. The identity behind this is just about identifying when it's appropriate to look for this build and to be comfortable in just a mentality shift, right? Instead of wreaking havoc and 1v1ing people, you're chilling, you're reacting, you're outscaling, and you're just disrupting what the enemy wants to do. Okay, let's have a look at an example laning phase. So here we are Kai'Sa Bard against Yunara and Sona. Unfortunately, this game I misclicked and went biscuits instead of jack of all trades. Don't think about that too much. Otherwise, it's just kind of like a range versus range lane here. You can see I am sprinting straight to lane. I decide that I'm going to take sweeper. I'm not going to give them respect with a trinket. I want to control mid bush. I think I can stand my ground and occupy some space. And remember, the way that we're going to get through lane is leaning into our short, concise trades, using the bushes, right-clicking minions. As you can see here, we're getting to clear the ward. Taking as much space as I can. And again, with this rune page, you can end up winning some lanes if you play them really well. I think Sona walks up a little bit too far. Short, concise trade, back off, right? Immediately back off after Q plus empowered auto attack. And then I'm controlling from mid bush. I'm threatening to find auto attacks and cut the trade into the bushes, especially when my passive is up. Again, short, concise on electrocute timer. I saved my next passive for that trade. Now Sena's significantly softened up. I still have bush control. We're in a really good spot moving forwards here. There's a big race for level 2. I'm pinging on the way. I'm looking to do an all-in onto the center here. She ends up flashing. So she's really softened up. She has no summoners. I don't mind using my summoners aggressively, especially in a ranged matchup. So that's totally fine. And then just right-click minions, use the bushes. A successful Bard laning phase is not solo killing the enemy 10 times. It's staying healthy, finding reasonable base timers, getting through the lane to be able to do bad things later on. It's been quite a precise laning phase so far, though. A lot of pressure from Fog, a lot of trading on my windows. Sona wants to walk up and try to get her soul, so I find short concise and then try to cut the trade into the Fog as much as I can. Not too happy with Kaiser running away and boarding while I was getting chased, but that's fine. We find a good trade on the center. With W usage, you just want to kind of put it behind your behind yourselves towards the side of the lane so that it doesn't get picked up randomly, and you can have a chance to just go back and collect it when you need a little bit of health. But here my jungle is topside, so I'm gonna start to respect a little bit more here. Like maybe we can shove this wave and then kind of chill. I don't want to die to the enemy jungler, but I also don't want the enemy jungler to know I'm playing around him. So I mean, I have my E. I'm ready to juke it. I E through the wall. I'm wasting a lot of their time. I Q them. And this is something like if you want to be really annoying and slippery on bard, you save your Q. And then if people follow you through your E, then you can stun them, guaranteed. So that's what I was doing there. I also disrupt J4's base. And so Jarvan, he didn't have a successful gank. His tempo was delayed. Nothing disastrous ended up happening on weak side as bad, so we're in a good spot. And now it's just about finding a reasonable base timer for ourselves or disrupting the enemy's base timer. That's what I'm thinking about right now. Eventually, when my Aatrox is active on the map, then we can use him to find a gank or a crash into base. And if not, then I'll disrupt the enemies instead. I'm trying to entice them to hang around longer, like I'm threatening to hold a freeze, but then I can't really. And so after all is said and done, I'm just running forwards to make sure they're not taking a greedy recall, and then we'll just find our own crash into base. Pretty happy, right? They crash, they base, we crash, we base. We're getting through the laning phase. No disasters. We were weak-sided initially, so cool. So far, so good. I do find a window here to end up roaming towards mid instead because my jungler is active, and I was just keeping my options open if something breaks out here. As you can see, something is likely to break out here. I eventually decide, not really. Let's head home. We're going to be buying combat stats, of course. I'm pinging for my ADC to take the portal. I always pay attention. Unfortunately, I didn't buy the Ruby Crystal. I think I misclicked. Obviously, I wanted to there. But yeah, I always pay attention to my ADC's recall timer so that they can take the portal out of base as well to get as good tempo as possible. I'm going to be collecting some chimes from base. Don't overthink chimes. Generally, we're just going to be chaining them from base or from lane when you're out of mana, but not the biggest deal. Getting the W's behind us towards the side of the lane. Again, our Aatrox is active on top side here, so we're not going to be able to achieve too much active pressure. I'm going to kind of move towards the middle of the map where something might be happening, but again, I'm weak-sided. It's not that safe for me. I want to focus a little bit more on just securing as good of a lane spot as possible. And that's just League of Legends, right? If junglers didn't exist, we would be winning this lane harder. If my jungler powers bot and their jungler powers top, we would be absolutely stomping, but it is what it is. Trying to put some pressure on these last hits, trying to threaten with my short concise trades with Q plus passive, trying to pretend I'm AFK, and then to maybe find a Q. So this is like the general flow of this lane, and then eventually, like when your jungler is active around your side of the map, you want to get something done, right? Last time we found a crash into base. This time, as you can see on the minimap there, our jungle is going to be active soon, right? Like he's going to do his Krugs, and then he's going to look to do something, whether that's gank or crash and base or find a counter jungle, whatever the case may be, I'll make sure something happens. Quite clearly, I'm clicking forwards here to put pressure on the cannon last hit. I find a short concise, cut the trade. Happy with that. And now my jungler's in the area. They started to back off, so maybe they have some vision around here, so then we'll just take control. I look for a Q flash So here I was happy to inject some volatility. Unfortunately, I did miss the Q flash angle. So here I should have just tried to end up a little bit more here, and then I might be able to just catch a piece of the wall sticking out. But I don't mind just like being really aggressive when my jungler's on the side of the map as well, right? Like again, their jungle's top, my jungle's bot. Worst case, she's going to get heavily chunked and probably have to flash away. Best case is what ends up happening. We just kind of brute force, kill them. Don't hesitate. Be decisive when your jungler's on your side of the map as well. I'm going to give my ADC solo plate gold there. And then just head on home. And we're just going to kind of keep this pace of game up. Back into the map. I'm pinging for ADC to take portal. She wasn't ready. That's fine. Purely building combat stats here, of course. But again, it's that flow of League of Legends, right? Like use your jungle when he's on your side of the map. Respect enemy jungle when the shoe's on the other foot. Now I'm looking for an ult. I get Yunara's flash. I'm happy to just ult and then just get a fight started and land a Q stun after his ult. And again, I'm happy to invest my resources towards bot here to really play for the bot quest as much as possible and deny plates and get plates. Unfortunately, I couldn't stop the ADC there. Looking for a short concise here. Unfortunately, I just get spaced a little bit too much, and then I missed out on that electrocute proc. Happens. Not stressing about constantly trying to roam. It's season 16. I'm happy to just play the lane as well as possible. Pinging on the way here. I know that Yunara has no flash. I know that they're missing some cooldowns, but we're just not quite in position, and I don't have ult, so nothing to do there. Not overthinking the grubs timer. If the enemy support roams the grubs, I'll kill their ADC. If not, I'll lane 2v2 as well as I can. Trying to use the bushes, trying to play on short, concise trade windows. Trying to bait out some spells. Asking my ADC to shove here. Sona greeds and goes for a soul. So just like understanding when people might walk up, right? For last hits, for cannons, for souls, or when people are near terrain, it's going to be easier to land skill shots. So I'm going to get that electrocute proc there, punish her for misstepping pretty heavily. Going to collect all of my Ws that I've been laying on the ground here. We'll have a look at just one more little fight. I think we've got the gist of how we want to approach laning phase as Bard in your just generic ranged matchup. I know that the enemy ADC has no flash, so I don't feel compelled to ult just yet. And now I'm going to ult. And then we're just going to get a one-shot there. So just like appreciating that Sona is weaker, right? I took a very favorable trade on her earlier. She is squishier. She's weaker. And my ADC is quite strong. She's very happy to find a fight to the death here. I have my electrocutor to play around as well. I know she has no flash. I'm waiting for the Yunara to use her mobility, and that's a huge part of making sure you find success on Bard, is holding your skill shots for post-mobility, if possible, if necessary, to make sure that, you got to land your spells. The difference between landing and missing your Q or your R can be absolute night and day. Cool. So now let's move on to some mid to late game on Bard instead. So for this mid to late game, this time we are building the right things. We have Jack of all trades. As you can see, we're going Banner Pipes into Leandry, staying on tier 1 boots. And let's just see how we perform. The state of the map is we did a pretty good job bot. Our top lane is getting demolished. So actually, no, this is not what is happening this game. We're against I believe a Jinx and Emilio, and so remember when we were talking about Bards being able to increase the pace of game and thrive in the chaos better than ranged champions? This is going to be a pretty good example game for that. So anyway, just playing on my limits, being very aggressive, embracing my champion's identity. I'm going to do a lot of damage in these messy situations. I also always have my exit strategy was just being able to E through terrain. So I'm very safe in those situations as well. I'm just going to ask tough questions, do a bunch of damage, apply some CC, and see what happens. I'm going to be very decisive. If I think someone's out of position, I'm just going to send it. Especially against the mobile champions, you need to get comfortable landing your ult on a mobile carries. Apply bandit pipes with my Q and give us a bunch of attack speed as well. And then if there's an opportunity to decisively collapse on someone, I'm going to do so. You can see I'm pinging on the way. Zero hesitation moving down here. And then we're just going to play it out and execute as well as possible. I noticed that they TP down, so I'm not just going to sprint in and die. I'm going to take my time, and then I'm just going to assess how it's ending up. Right now, I decide that their only out is to try and kill me. So I'm going to make sure that they don't have that opportunity. I'm going to back off. I'm going to preserve my life, and then we get a couple of kills. Again, just being very decisive and just reading the fight as well as we can. Immediately portaling up towards top lane here to see if I can get something done. My Zahin is teleporting back to top lane. If there's a fight, I'll be there. If not, I'll move on with my life. Be at the fights, fight well. That Q was obviously bad. A little bit of fighting well here. I'm going to time my auto attack so that once his E dissipates, then my auto attack goes through and applies my electrocute and everything that I wanted. Look how decisive we are here. I don't mind if he jukes this because then he'll be running into my Aphelios with purple gun, and it's likely we're going to be able to kill him anyway. So it's really that decisiveness and pouncing on an opportunity when someone is just mildly out of position. If you do so with no hesitation, oftentimes things work out. Being really obnoxious with my range, and I'm really starting to ramp up my damage now as the game gets later and later. And I'm going to be pretty happy to base for my Leandries at some stage in the near future as well. But meanwhile, we're just going to get some deep vision. I immediately pounce, right? Victor is out of position. So let's passively. You don't hesitate, things work out. And then it's just about executing, right? We've created an opportunity, or we pounced on an opportunity. Let's execute. Can I land this stun or not? If yes, he'll die. If no, he'll survive. So he's juking because he knows I have Q, right? So I'm going to read that he's juking, and then I'm just going to stand my ground, apply a slow, and now he's slowed, and I'm happier with this kind of angle here. There's no way he can dodge this, especially when he's slowed. So then we set up a pretty free kill for our ADC. Cool. It's this pace of game that Milio just can't keep up with, right? Like he can't really do much with this map state, with this pace of game. It's going to be the same for most other range supports in the game as well. But yeah, we're happy to get our Leandries. We're buying a lot of pinks in the new season with how much cheaper they are post support quest, especially after my 2 items. These are the 2 biggest item spikes I care about. Probably the only 2 items I'm going to complete in the game before it's done anyway. And so now I'm noticing that my ADC is fighting. I should have passed a little bit more directly towards him, so this is my bad, but he just kind of one-shots the enemy jungle because we've been snowballing pretty hard at this stage. Cool. Again, look at the decisiveness. A mobile mage on the side of the map, immediately pull the trigger, and then it'll probably work. Not the greatest ult. At least he has to like run forwards and get mildly zoned. We'll take it. But either way, another dead mid laner. Okay, just going to wait until we're kind of back on the map. We're going to click up towards the action on the top side of the map here. Even though I'm not looking at it, my eyes are on the minimap. And so I'm just kind of like min-maxing, collecting my chimes, and then assessing, right? How is this fight panning out? Should I path like this to defend, or should I path like this to kill people? I decide that I was initially going to kill them, but then my Rammus is actually taking quite a lot of damage. I'm going to blast Cone over here. I have my E to get out if necessary on the back end, and I'll just kind of play it out from here. I'm going to find a Q stun onto the Jinx on the wall, and then you can see my positioning, right? I'm always near terrain. I'm never under threat. I can always E out. A lot of bards that I've worked with put their E on cooldown aggressively or randomly, and then they just end up dying because they have no escape hatch to fall back on. And so now the fight's winning. I decide I can go for even more. I bring my ASOL in. We get the ADC's flash. Cool. Now, of course, I know that this game is turning out to be a bit of a stomp, right? But it's the concepts, it's the decisiveness, it's how we're snowballing and capitalizing on the state of the map that is quite important here. Here, I'm just kind of testing damage limits a little bit, playing around her barrier, getting a feel for her movements, waiting for the traps to expire. Not many other supports can just like 1v1 people in a setting like that. So that's what makes Bard pretty fun and pretty special as well, if you know his limits. Cool. So we're going to get back onto the map, spend our gold. I'm still not going tier 2 boots. I don't think I need them. If there's any hint of activity on the map that there could be a fight around, then I'll move to there. A bunch of my teammates are dead, so not too much to get done. And then I'm just going to be really obnoxious and try to mess with the enemy ADC here. Now, unfortunately, I ended up griefing this one. I missed my ult. I don't dodge her W. I misplayed my limits. And so it's important. Again, I wanted to include a moment like this so that you guys can learn from it. It's important that you're comfortable doing this kind of stuff, thriving in the chaos, messing around. What I should have done was click over here. I don't have the damage to kill her. So I should click over here, and then I can portal through here. Or I can portal through the long wall here, and then I'll be totally fine. My positioning around here was bad. My exit strategy was bad. And so, I mean, I do a lot of damage to the enemy ADC. I do get them to invest their time and resources in ultimate, but obviously it's not worth just kind of dying and giving a shutdown like that. But I'm happy to do so, right? You've got to be a psycho on Bard. You've got to be comfortable with how much damage you can deal and take, and you're not going to learn those limits if you don't make aggressive plays. Okay, let's keep moving forwards here. We're going to have a look at a couple more important moments in this game. Again, here, I'm doing way too much. I overstep my limits. I do kind of like mess with them, and I do have my exit strategy, but it was a little bit awkward, a little bit tricky, right? Like, my teammates are nearby, so they can respond pretty quickly, and maybe I enticed them to kind of run forwards. But I was probably doing a little bit too much there. But just like getting comfortable in the chaos, you don't have to overthink the game too much sometimes. You can just be a psycho and land your skill shots and do damage and dodge skill shots and perform and execute well, and then sometimes that can really go a long way. Okay, one more moment of this game I wanted to just show you guys. But it's really that pace of game, that decisiveness, and that leaning into your champion's identity of creating number advantages, causing and thriving chaos. I'm very confident around here because there's terrain and I have my E, so I can just really mess with people if I want to. I decide I don't need the ults yet, so I'm going to make sure Jinx dies. The way that you want to approach Bard's ults is in more even-numbered settings. You want to wait for the result. So the result is it's winning, right? It's clear that it's winning and they're going to be looking to exit. Given that, then I can ult and find a high-value ult. What you don't want to do is just kind of like ult randomly in a team fight setting, and then, you know, people can't follow up because people are meaningfully out of position because the rest of the enemy team is still there. So you wait until the fight is either winning or losing, generally, an even number of fights. If it's winning, you ult when they're trying to exit. If it's losing, you ult to allow your teammates to get out. Otherwise, you're basically looking to give your teammates a Zhonya's. Now, in this game, that's not going to really happen because we're really far ahead and we're winning these sequences. But in more even team fights, I'll be ulting teammates to give them Zhonya's. But see, he has to exit. It's losing, so it's a very easy ult for me to land here. And then, unfortunately, I just missed out on the two-man Q stun there, but we're just kind of brute force running them down, being psychotic, being confident. And there you go. Cool. Good stuff. All right. Now for the last champion on the list and the best support in the meta currently is Sona. So the reason that Sona is so incredibly strong is she is just going to be abusing runes and items better than almost any support I can remember. The items are basically like tailor-made for her this season. She can also keep up with the fast pace of game surprisingly well. She's going to be running Celerity, build Boots of Swiftness, have her E to run around really quickly, have a move speed shard. So she can genuinely keep up with and even create fast paces of game. She doesn't have to be just like an ARAM or FF type of champion. She can keep up. She can do a bit of damage and thrive in a bit of mess and chaos with Bloodsong doing a bunch of damage every now and then as well. So yeah, she does the runes and items really, really well. Keeps up with a fast pace and can thrive in a fast pace better than a lot of enchanters out there. Season 16 home guards things. Of course, Sona's weakest part of her game is in the laning phase. And then if things get a little bit too tricky, you can just base and come back. And Season 16 is easier to get through tricky lanes. So that's always something to keep in mind. Basically, if you can survive lane, which you can, if you can be at all of the fights, you can with all of our move speed. If you can scale and team fight insanely well, which you can, then she's just OP. There's just very little reason to not pick her. I think she is incredibly powerful. She's very easy to execute and to understand as well, so that always helps. There's not a steep learning curve. Low skill floor, high skill ceiling, but that low skill floor is going to be easy for people to find results pretty quickly on her. In terms of her basic identity, I think she's probably one of the most well understood champions in the game. She is one of, if not the best scaling champion in the entire game. She loves extended fights and ARAMs, of course. Like we were saying, she doesn't only perform in those moments, but that's when she's going to thrive, when she can just make use of all of her utility and AoE on a short cooldown when she's staying alive and providing so much to the action. And yeah, she's very easy to execute. She can be a little bit tricky to master, but not completely necessary. So I want to give a few points of reference, and then we're just going to jump into some of the gameplay. So some points of reference: when you're against ranged matchups, you want to be careful about committing your Q. Sorry, not committing your Q, committing your auto attack after your Q. So when she presses Q, it's point and click. It has quite a long range, and then you are incentivized to try and use your auto attack, which is going to be empowered by your Q, to find that extra trading damage. Just be careful against ranged matchups, because if you're in range to auto attack a ranged champion, they're in range to trade back onto you, and you're a very squishy champion. So a lot of the times, you need a good reason to commit your auto attack against ranged matchups. You need to be in fog, or you need to be going for an auto attack when they can't respond, when they're going for a last hit, or you need to be healthier, or they need to be weak. Something needs to be going in your favor to commit auto attacks against ranged champions. Otherwise, you need to be comfortable just kind of spamming your Q and not committing auto attacks too much. And then versus melee, it's going to be a little bit different. You can commit your auto attacks a bit more, but you also need to be just generally more respectful about their threat, right? Because we can get one shot. Apart from that, you just want to encourage your teammates to group up and to be bloodthirsty, but not yourself. So like you want action, you want things to happen around you, but you're not going to go and make it happen yourself. You're not going to go and face check bushes. You're not going to sprint and engage yourself. You're just encouraging with pings, and you're, standing close to your teammates and then fighting through them, basically. Last thing I want to mention is just like the most common mistake I notice with Sonas is playing way too passively in lane. And I deliberately chose a VOD where I could showcase what Sona can actually achieve in lane. You don't want to just sit under tower and not contest the shove and not try to actively poke people out and not use the bushes and just say, I'm Sona, I'm AFK until 20 minutes. Like, that's just not how you play the game. That's just not as much as you can get out of this champion. So don't fall into that trap. Try to win lane. Try to find windows to land your Q and in order if you can. Try to right-click the minions and use the bushes. And also, like, if you're picking this champion when it's most appropriate to, when you're not against really high threat, then you don't need to be that scared. And you can win a lot of lanes. If you're against like a Rakan or an Alistar or a Braum or a Taric or a Rakan, sorry, I said a Rakan, or like a Zillion, or just like lower threat supports, then you could do a lot more. And so I just want to give a little bit of inspiration to that with the gameplay example. So with that said, let's jump in and see how we can be playing Sona in Season 16. All right, so in this game example, we are Mel and Sona against Cassiopeia and Rakan. So a couple of mages in the bot lane, whatever, it is what it is. There's a lot of mages running around. The support matchup is a little bit more interesting. So we are against Rakan. Like we were saying earlier, Rakan has a bit lower threat. So we're going to see how we can play. We're going to be playing quite aggressively and just understanding our limits. How much threat does the enemy have? How much respect do they deserve? And not giving unnecessary respect. So initially, of course, we're sprinting straight to lane. We're warding this bush. And so that we can just kind of get some information and space appropriately. I'm standing in the back of this bush in case Rakan is here and then he tries to W the bush, then I'll be able to dodge it and then fight him on the back end. My mouse is here so that if they ward, I will click on the ward immediately and kill the ward. Once I get the feeling that they're not here, then I'm going to take a little bit more space, move weirdly so that I can dodge a Rakan W if he was actually in that bush. And now I have a lot of space. And so now I can kind of look for a Q plus order from Fog upon the start of the lane. That's exactly what I do. Just the Q there. I wasn't comfortable committing auto attack. I end up misspacing the Rakan, but we're going to win the fight on the back end. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. I understand that Rakan has his limitations, right? He's not a great stat checker. He can't get out level 1 if he just W's forwards. So not only do I understand the matchup, I'm also pathing in a way that allows me to win the extended fight. There's a reason I'm pathing like this and not like this. But if I path just straight down here, Cassio is going to do a lot of damage to me. So I'm finding a way to punish the range advantage I have over the Rakan and not get punished by the Cassio as well. And then we just do a lot of damage on the back end, right? Like way more damage. If that was a Nautilus, I wouldn't be doing this. But I understand the matchup, the champions around me. I'm finding these two-man queues, pressuring from the bushes, playing obviously very aggressively here. Find another two-man queue. I'm looking to find these queues, especially when Cassio is looking to go for a last hit. And these two-man queues are really going to stack up my passive quickly. Another two-man queue. We do get hit by the tower, so we're just, yeah, we're playing very aggressively. And I'm just going to be trying to space Rakan's W, trying to space Cassio's Q, trying to find as many Qs myself as I can, maintaining the shove. We're really towing that line between danger and safety here. I'm asking my Mel to ward. I'm just going to manifest it by staring at this bush until she does it. Another two-man queue, and then spacing their spells, aggressively baiting out Cassio's Q and then juking away. I feel like I'm going to take another tower shot. at some stage, I'm really pushing it here. There's just something that happens in my brain when I play ranged supports, when I play enchanters. Like, you can just do so much that sometimes you do too much and then you just end up inting. But hopefully this is giving some inspiration for how you can really dominate a lane, even on a champion that's not supposed to on paper, right? Like Sona. And of course, it is going to be influenced by the matchup. But if there's not that much threat, then you can dominate. We got 2 points Q instead of a point in E, so I can keep dominating. A good use of Sona's W is when you can get value out of the heal and the shields, right? So I'm using my W here just to block some of the damage from the Cassio's Q onto my Mel. Finding another Q. Now we're going to hard shove. Once the enemies drop lower and lower in health, you want to start hard shoving so that they can never find a base and then come back to lane and then catch most of the wave. Oh, there's the next tower shot. Whoops. And then you do want to find a recall. Try to find a crash into base when you have money for tier. Getting a fast tier is pretty useful to stack that up. Tier refill, sprint back to lane. Okay, let's get back into lane here. It's going to be much of the same thing, really trying to dominate, trying to overwhelm the enemy's mental stack. Like they need to think about last hitting, and they need to think about trying to land their spells on me. But you can see I'm clicking here. I'm also kind of like baiting Cassio to go for a Q. I'm pretending like I'm just clicking forwards like an idiot, but then I'm really ready to react and play around her Q range. That gives me an opening to kind of shift forward and then play around her next Q cooldown, find Q plus auto, and then use W to block the damage and heal. And so we basically just annihilated her in that type of trade there. Baiting Rakan's Q range, dodging, spacing his W, spacing all their spells. Like, how fun does this look? I mean, this is so fun to play. Playing right on the edge, playing incredibly aggressively, really trying to dominate. Using heal when I feel like I need to create space to dodge Cassio's Q, and then spam pinging forwards. Turns out we're getting ganked, so now we'll just try to exit as much as we can. And we're not going to flash if we don't need to. We're going to keep running forwards and dealing damage and putting them under pressure. Dodging Cassio Q still, fighting 2v3 basically. Wasting a lot of their time and resources instead of just like sitting under tower. And then I decide that it's likely that they're not hanging around, and so we can just find a shove, or at least the enemy jungle, the Kayn, is probably not hanging around. Maybe the enemy bot lane is hanging around to cheese us. I don't care. They won't kill us. I'll try to kill them instead. And then we find a crash into base on weak side. Beautiful. Now, the later the game goes on, the more that you can be annoying, because you're going to be building move speed, right? You're going to have your E for move speed. You're going to have boots for move speed. You can really get in people's faces and toe those lines more precisely. You can bait more. You can deal a little bit more damage with everything. As you can see, I couldn't care less about the rest of the map. I'm just going to play lane as well as I can. Slowing down the Rakan. So right here, this is the thing that a lot of players struggle to play around or to grasp, is sometimes you can be engaged on and it doesn't matter. Right? Like, I really don't care if Rakan jumps on me here, because there's no follow-up. Cassio can't engage, right? So what you can do against engagers, any engager, you can ask them really tough questions like, hey, do you think I'm out of position? Are you going to engage with me, or are you just going to take damage? And then if you overwhelm them, it can be really tough for them to make an accurate assessment. But I know that I'm not out of position here. And so sometimes you don't need to play around the threatening spells. You just need to play around if there actually is threat or not. And if the enemy ADC is not in position and does not have cooldowns, then you can care less. And so that's why I was very confident, just clicking away from the Cassio and standing my ground, and then doing a lot of damage again to Rakan on the back end. I find a 2-man Q. I know Rakan's W was still on cooldown, and now I'll go back to spacing Rakan's W. I know Cassio is going to be incentivized to walk forwards to contest his cannon. I'm going to be sprinting forwards, finding a bunch of right clicks, finding high value Ws. That's the other thing about Sona is like low skill floor, high skill ceiling. The high skill ceiling comes in to effect to make sure you're getting use out of your auras, right? So here, I am trying to bring my W aura onto my Mal before I shift to my E aura, right? Because I don't just want to get this heal. I want that aura so that she gets shielded. Not only is that going to help us stay healthy, it's going to give me a stack of my passive if the shield breaks as well. And then I can go E and keep her in both of my W and E auras. And then if you really get maximum value out of your auras throughout the game and fights, it's going to be a huge difference maker. Spacing Rakan's Q, overwhelming them. I think they've had enough of my antics, and now they just feel like they have to sit under towers, so fair enough. As soon as I go to ward, my ADC is suddenly in a tremendous amount of threat, but that's fine. We'll get back here. I'm looking for that auto attack on the tower with the crystalline structure in the new season as well. We notice Kane. So this is the other thing. Like, this is how you really win games on enchanters and on ranged champions. Is you dominate 2v2 and you force the enemy to try and relieve pressure down here, and then you just never quite in range to die, and you waste the enemy jungler's time, you waste the enemy mid laner's time. You don't really want your teammates to gank your lane as much as you want to just win your lane and draw attention from the enemies. But here, I mean, we've just been... I don't think I've ever seen this before, where there's like 2 solo kills in the same lane. But I mean, we just softened them up so much over time, and we just decided to ult and kill the Rakan on the back end. We're going to take the base. We're going to give the solo plate to our ADC. So this game, I was considering just like rushing Diadem. I wouldn't do this next time. I was playing around with no Helia into Diadem and Diadem Rush instead into the traditional Enchanter items. But in future, I will definitely do Helia into Diadem. I had to play around a little bit though. So right now, given that my ADC was in base, then I can just, kind of investigate briefly around mid and not lose out on too much. Turns out there is a fight, so I will be moving to this. Maybe there's some vision around here because Aatrox starts to run away. So we'll just kind of move on with our lives and head back down bot. And now it starts to get a little bit funky. I know Kane's top, right? We can see him on the minimap. As long as I don't get Rakan W'd, I'm not under threat. And I can just really annoy to the end of the earth. And this is what I mean when sometimes I feel like I get possessed when I play enchanters, especially like Sona and Karma. They do something to my brain where I just play way too aggressively, but at the same time, they're investing a lot of resources to try and kill me. Now, of course, the reason that I end up in trouble is because I got hit by Rakan W. As long as I don't get hit by Rakan W, I'm fine. So if I have the mental, the presence of mind here to kind of dodge this Rakan W and maybe use heal to give myself move speed and keep dodging and running away, like I could exit through here and never die. I could juke here, exit through here, and be totally fine. But I get hit by the threatening spell. If you get hit by the threatening spell as Sona, you can be in pretty big trouble. But we're just gonna try to run away. We're gonna flash the Rakan W on the back end, and then once he has no W, I'm gonna chase forwards. So I was definitely a little bit out of position there, but I just wasted a lot of time and resources regardless, right? Gonna head back down bot here. And then we're going to put some pressure on Cassio So this should be your first instinct in the new season is if you see the enemy support roaming, then you put a lot of pressure in lane 2v1. Doesn't mean you tower dive, but you can do this. You can soften them up. You can put pressure on last hit. You can hit the tower and get plates. Eventually, you're either going to get a super accelerated ADC, an ADC quest, or the enemy support's going to have to relieve pressure down here. Doesn't matter if you're playing Leona or Sona. So here we execute this play pretty cleanly. Again, if you do things with like no hesitation, things can often work out. I'm waiting until I'm comfortable that I'm going to land my ult because she has spent time casting her Q. I know I can tank a couple tower shots, especially with my W. And then my ADC does a good job of following up. And something you can do on Sona is just kind of like ult for fun, quote unquote, just to get resources, to get a chunk, to get flashes. Kind of like Orianna shockwaves you might see in pro play. Sometimes they just ult to achieve a little bit. It doesn't have to be like fight changing the entire time, especially if you're not against too much threat and you don't need it purely for defensive purposes the whole time. Going to make sure my ADC's base doesn't get cancelled here. Okay, and we're going to have a look at one more sequence here coming out of base. My ADC was in base. I have a little bit more freedom, especially as the game goes on. You can start to move around the map a little bit more, move into the action, heal and aura onto my Gwen, save her life, and then just start running at people and play around the threat. I pretend like I'm running away. Now I'm going to run forwards to cancel a potentially greedy base if they were looking to do so. Just running around, being obnoxious. Dropping some wards down. Warding camps are OP if you ever can do that. And now, what you can do, again, this is kind of like similar to what we were looking at before, right? Like, to the untrained eye, it might look like a Sona is tower diving 1v2 behind their towers. But as long as I don't get hit by Rakan W, I'm fine. And yeah, just a different flavor. Unfortunately, I get hit by Rakan W. I get one shot. I get ulted. I end. But again, if you are comfortable playing around your limits, then you can get away with things like that. And the only reason that I was able to dominate lane so hard is I'm comfortable testing my limits and understanding what I need to space and what deserves respect and what doesn't. And I was definitely overstepping my limits a little bit here. But again, hopefully just a little bit of inspiration for how much pressure you can exert and to not just kind of sit under tower and hope for the best in the early game. You can get shoved, you can win lane, you can get favorable base timers, you can still move to the action from base. So yeah. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at Sona in the mid to late game. I picked out a game that's just going to exemplify Sona. We got absolutely annihilated in the laning phase, but you're the best scaling champion in the game, and the game's never over until it's over. So let's see what happens. We're incredibly far behind, but we're going to run around and keep up with the fast pace of the game. Look how fast we are. Also, as a rule of thumb, ignore the Mundo, but as a rule of thumb, you want to use your empowered E with your passive. It's great offensively and defensively. So when in doubt, just empower your E. I'm a little bit annoyed at the Mundo here, to be honest, because this game is still winnable, but he's just AFKing and trolling. So it is what it is. We'll just move on and keep playing the game. And then look at the pace of game and how you can create still. So this is happening because of our runes and items, right? We have a lot of move speed. We have Blood Song. You don't have to just team fight. You can see my clicks here, right? I'm dodging Karthus's Q, so I'm getting in range to land my E, dodging Karthus Q, finding Q, dropping my auras on my teammates, and then you get a kill. It can be as simple as that. You can be surprisingly fast, and you can set up plays with your E slow and all of that damage and all of these auras. You know Leona to set fights up, but don't underestimate how you can really, just thrive in a fast-paced game. There's never going to be just team fight after team fight after team fight. You're going to have to thrive in chaos. And so now it's just about towing that line as well as I can. Can I be useful? Can I provide to the fight while staying out of threat range, but also baiting their threatening spells so that I might create opportunities for my teammates, right? It's a very fine line to balance on. I would recommend maybe if you're platinum and below to just stay out of threat range completely and to just provide to the fight, playing on your range and your cooldowns. But again, you are so quick, and if you're confident enough, you can just dodge skill shots, and now Blitzcrank has no hook for like 15, 20 seconds, right? That's a big deal. There's a huge amount of pressure that our team can now exert. You can see I find that E-empowered auto attack, I'm running forwards, and then someone has to flash away, they take a bunch of damage. Thrive in the chaos. And this is all while we are incredibly far behind. Okay, just being a little bit careful of that bush in case they're cheesing me from there. Never FF. Get that shit off my screen. And then, I mean, it's hard to be proactive from behind, right? So we're just trying to clear some vision out, to drop some wards where I think it might be useful. And then we're going to decisively collapse on skirmish opportunities. Like this Kiana is isolated, right? So we can either just kind of run here and not die, or we can say, actually, maybe this is a 3v1 opportunity. Maybe we can blow her up before something disastrous happens. Get that flash out in time. I'm trying to run around here so that the Malignant's pool from Karthus' ult doesn't burn me to death, and then I'm just going to try to hang around again. Always stay in the fight. Doesn't matter your health, your wards, your gold. Nothing matters more than just being at the fights. And then me applying those auras to Swain made the difference between him living and dying. And then maybe me hanging around here, giving auras to my Renekton, allows him to win in this next sequence, right? Like, do not underestimate how useful you can be on low health. And then I know that Malphite just ulted forward, so now I'm going to be a little bit more confident. I apply my E passive auto attack. I'm getting my W onto the Mundo over the wall there. I'm trying to get my W aura onto my Renekton, but I'm respecting the Blitzcrank. And so it should be quite clear to see that I am just trying to be as useful as possible while not being able to die. As aggressive as possible, towing that line. Okay. So then it's just kind of much of the same stuff. Like the way we're going to win this game is if we're either able to create some weird moments where an enemy's isolated and we use our surprise move speed and pick to isolate them, or we're just going to out team fight really, really hard. We're just going to group up, and then our items and our auras are just going to do all of the heavy lifting because our kit is broken in that regard. But it's going to be a lot of the same things as other supports, right? Be it the fights and fight well and understand what kind of fights you thrive in. But also make sure you don't, you are a very squishy champion and you got to be careful about the enemy's threat. But as long as I don't get Blitzcrank hooked, I'm going to provide so much more to fights than the Blitzcrank. I'm scared about all of this fog over here. You can see that I'm scared, so I'm going to play around it. I'm going to be ready to juke spells. I'm going to take it slow when I'm entering areas. They show a bunch of numbers topside, so we're behind. That's fine. We're going to try and trade sides of the map, especially with objective bounties. Whenever you're behind, you're very happy to just sack one side of the map, take another. You can see here that I'm being quite aggressive around mid, but I always have my exit strategy towards the bottom side of the map. And that's something I should have mentioned a little bit more. I think I did mention it actually, but having an exit strategy on squishy enchanters and Sona is very, very important. Like there's a big difference between me being here and me being here. Because if I'm around here, I can exit, right? And when I was tower diving 1v2, I can exit. I have places to move to create space and to survive. I'm trusting my move speed and my clicks to be able to dodge his hook if he throws it out. I'm looking to create something with my ult. Turns out it was a bad ult. So there's a time and place for that, right? This is a bad ult because he's not isolated. We can't abuse this window. If he was significantly isolated, then we can play this out, and he'll have to exit with 1 health, and then the next sequence they're down a member. But since this is a more of an organized setting, I should hold ult and use it more reactively when the enemies are doing stuff like this. Right now, I would love to find an ult. Now, in terms of how I was clicking, I want to avoid Kiana's ult here. So I'm trying to get out of range, and then I'm going to have my exit strategy up here, and then I'm just going to reassess. Turns out I just get one shot. I'm a squishy little Sona. We are super far behind. It is what it is. I messed up. But if I played that fight slower and I had ult and I ulted Kiana when she tried to jump forwards and I wasn't in range to get pushed onto the wall, then it might have panned out a little bit differently. Anyway, let's skip forwards a little bit here. End up getting hooked, but that's fine. He doesn't have much follow-up, whatever. Playing on my range with my auras and my cooldowns. People are just going to give you opportunities where if you perform well, then you're just going to get kills. So don't worry about like trying to orchestrate a genius macro strategy to catch them out. It's like just fight. Just understand how to fight well on your champion, and good things will happen. Here I'm considering putting some pressure on the Karthus with all of my move speed and threat. But my window is just not quite interested, and my ADC wasn't here, so I decided against it for now. But the way that this game is going is we are able to kind of group up with our teammates, make the most of our kit, and just hope that does enough for us to come back into this game, which a lot of the times it actually will be. Just want to look at one more fight here. On Sona. So we're grouped up. We're with our teammates. We're happy. We're ulting Kiana, then trying to space her so that if she does go for an ult, we dodge the stun, and then we just keep applying our auras. Our items are doing insane work at this stage with Helia, Diadem, Moonstone. Just existing is providing absurd value. Trying to dodge all of the threat when possible. There's a Karthus dead on the ground, Karthus ults. There's a Malphite and Kiana running around. So it's a pretty narrow tight rope to balance on, but we're doing our best here, trying to stay out of threat range. And hopefully it's pretty clear here that using your items, using your auras as well to get your teammates in the auras, and then just leaning into your kit is just going to do an absurd amount of work. And that's what happened in this game, right? We significantly far behind. We pounced on a few creative opportunities, but mostly we just lent into our champion's identity. We tried to be at fights. We tried to stay alive and avoid threat. And then we tried to just get a bunch of our auras and spamming through our spells. And then that's how you can come back, and that's how you can really approach your games as Sona. So if you want to test your limits on Sona a little bit more, I recommend like the early game, you can be an absolute psycho and test your limits and see how much you can actually win and dominate and pressure lane. And then in the mid to late game, it's going to be a little bit more about that discipline, about making sure you don't face check and you respect the threat ranges and you're just staying alive and you're positioning selfishly and you have an exit strategy and you're just letting everything else do the work to make you so OP. So those were the 3 best champions to climb in solo queue as support right now of the new season. If you want a more comprehensive tier list, consider joining BLA, where I post a lot of content, including up-to-date tier lists of all of the supports in the game. I hope you learned something. See you guys around. For the astute observers in the room, you may have noticed that I stepped back from YouTube in 2025. I didn't step back from League of Legends or from coaching, but I also had some awesome traveling and competition experiences throughout the year that I thought would be fun sharing with you all. So I will be sharing bits and pieces at the end of my videos moving forwards. The first story I want to share is about my experience at the Pickleball World Cup in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, towards the end of 2025. But we'll get to that soon. We need a little bit of context. So I've been playing pickleball for about a year and a half now. I've been loving the exercise, the challenge, the people I meet, and the passion project it has been in my life. I ended up competing in and winning the New Zealand Open in September last year and secured my place to represent my country, New Zealand, at the World Champs in the following month. It was a stressful but rewarding weekend of competition for me. I was no longer the newcomer on the block. I had established myself as a top player in the country already, so the pressure was really on me to perform. Fortunately, I managed to do so. I was very happy with myself, and I couldn't wait to see how I fared on the international stage. This was my favorite shot from the finals. It was actually the first point in the match, which may have helped to set the tone. Fast forward to Florida. I had never been here before. My first impressions were, let's say, mixed. On one hand, I loved the change in climate and the palm trees everywhere. On the other hand, the drivers were insane. In my very first Uber ride, my driver was constantly honking at everyone and verbally abusing some old lady. It was very jarring, to be honest, especially compared to how driving is in my chill and small country of New Zealand. How it works there is you basically don't honk unless someone is dying. I was loving immersing myself at the highest level of competition again, living and breathing pickleball, getting to know my teammates like family. I thought it was so cool that they just had enormous lizards roaming around everywhere. Like in New Zealand, you basically don't see any wildlife. We have beautiful nature here, but that's about it. We also ended up checking out a beach, which had a cool performance nearby with a fun vibe. It was warm enough to be outside. There were people around. It was lively. This is all harder to find in New Zealand, minus finding a beach, of course. There was even a cool thunderstorm at night that I really enjoyed just looking at for a while. We had been extensively prepping, practicing, figuring out what our lineup to compete was. And before we knew it, it was the opening ceremony. And what an unforgettable evening that was. There were hundreds of people from 70 different countries competing. The atmosphere was electric. I met so many fellow pickleball enthusiasts, everyone chanting their country's names, reconnected with my South African roots over here as well. And I just really enjoyed the moment, both as a bystander appreciating the event and the vibes, and as a competitor, gearing up to represent my country with pride.